Tales from the wild. Stories from the heart. A journey into the mind and soul of fired-up business professionals where they share their vision for the future. And hear from a different non-profit organization every month as they create awareness of their goals and their needs. Dive into a world of untamed passion as we join our host, Shireen Buerta, for this month's episode of Friends from Wild Places.
Making good judgments when one has complete data, facts, and knowledge is not leadership, it's bookkeeping. Good day, Wild Hearts. Shireen here. I'm your virtual bookkeeper and QuickBooks advisor. If you have attempted to do your books by yourself, then you know how time-consuming it can be. And when you are trying to make those good judgments, you need accurate books. If you are that business owner who needs their books to be kept up to date and accurate without losing valuable time, then call Shireen's Bookkeeping Services today. Or make me your bookkeeper and allow me to keep your books so you can do life. If you want to know more about Shireen's Bookkeeping Services, go check me out at www.shireensbookkeeping.com and allow me to keep your books clean so you don't have to. Welcome back, listeners. You are listening to Friends from Wild Places with myself, Shireen, and my amazing co-host, Tanya. Tanya, what is happening in your life right now? What is going on? What are you working on? Tell us.
Well, good afternoon, Shireen and listeners. So currently just here busy in Miami, Florida, and working on some initiatives for our school program and some directives for the following year, which is 2024.
Nice, nice. Before we begin, I want to go in and just ask you, what were your feelings about the whole situation with the submersible Titan that imploded under the sea? What was your experience? What were your feelings? What was going through your head when it was all over the news, all over the world? I think the whole world was watching and waiting to see if these 5 were going to be rescued. You know the story?
So I was actually teaching an evening class when it was announced. So actually one of my students actually came on in the Zoom box and informed us all, about the tragedy that had occurred. And that was at the point when they actually realized that they could not be rescued. And so for my immediate thoughts were that, these type of situations and tragedies, most people, aside from, just complete bewilderment, upset, anger, frustration, starts to default to, well, whose fault is it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whose fault is it? Who can we point fingers at? And I think that's where, it's unfortunate because, lives were lost, families are mourning and grieving. And, there is a time and place for that, but that seems to kind of take precedence in my perspective in the media.
Right. Yeah, I think for me it was really difficult. I can only imagine what the loved ones might have been feeling standing on the boat, watching as people were trying to find their loved ones. It must have been so hard because I know for myself, when I heard the discussions of, they were trying to get very specialized equipment over to them. And according to the news, they were back and forth in discussions, and the discussions were taking longer than what they should have taken. And so I was just screaming at the TV screen going, come on, these people are in the tiny little submersible. It's 5 people squashed in this tiny little submersible down thousands of feet. If they are alive, I can only imagine what they might be going through mentally, knowing that they're running out of oxygen, that they've only got a certain amount of oxygen left, and then it's over. Imagine having that on the back of your mind as your hours get counted down for you, and you're just got nowhere to go,
Yes, what it reminded me of was the Challenger back in the 80s. where Christine McAuliffe was chosen to go up in the Challenger, and it was a celebratory, like everyone had to apply, and she was the chosen one to go up. And then the disaster happened with that. So I think the emotions around it, for example, given this situation, it's such a special opportunity, for people. And then I even heard afterwards, like, for example, the mom of the young boy, she was supposed to go, but the son really wanted to go, so she traded places with him. So I think when a tragedy like this strikes, whether it's 9/11, whether it's, the Challenger, whether it's any either man-made or natural disaster, we tend to, in the beginning, you glorify the opportunities that are there, right? For example, and then we kind of take a step back, and it's like, for people who, for example, like 9/11, that didn't get to work that day, or they were running late, or they were feeling ill. So then it's like you question, like, wow, is that like, divine intervention? Are you supposed to be where you're supposed to be? And as a funeral director, I know firsthand that no one is exempt from death, right? No one, none of us, doesn't matter age, religion, culture, any ethnicity, nothing. Like, that doesn't matter. But we don't know when, and we don't know how. So I think that presents, just some really like heartfelt discussion as far as, what situations that are in front of us that can sometimes seem as wonderful opportunities, and people super excited to be part of something of such magnitude, and then have a disaster take place.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, you are so right. Yeah, it was quite a story to follow. I am at peace to know that they didn't suffer, and that the implosion happened already on Sunday. So it wasn't like they were sitting under the water for a very long time. So yeah, anyway, I just wanted to know. I needed to know what everyone's thoughts were around the world, and me being in South Africa, you being in the US. I was curious to see what was going through your mind at the
Yes. And
time.
how are you, Shireen? And how are things in your world, with bookkeeping and virtual bookkeeping, I should say? How are things?
It's month end. So when month end happens, the first 2 weeks, first week and a half is chaos. So it's getting people's financials done, reconciling everything, picking through and analyzing, seeing if there's any spikes, differences that I can chat to my clients about, ideas that we can come together of how we can increase the income. So it's like always a little bit busy at this time of the month, but it's good. It's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for
Remind
asking.
me, Shireen, how did you actually get started with bookkeeping?
I have been doing bookkeeping on the sideline, and when the pandemic hit, I decided I was in aviation for 12, 13 years of my life. And so when I was retrenched, I lost everything. So being, I think, 37 at the time, having to move back, in with your parents, it was very difficult. And I've never really spent any time thinking on what I was going to do, if not with aviation. I just didn't think about that. I didn't ponder on it. One doesn't think at the age of 37 that things are going to change drastically unless it's a choice. I had no intentions otherwise. So I decided I wanted to no longer work for anyone. I didn't want to work. I knew that for certain. I did not want to work for anybody else. I wanted to work for myself. And so that's when I decided to turn the bookkeeping into a business. And why South Africa? Now that the pandemic has been and gone, everyone knows that you can go virtual now. And so if that's the case, why do I need to form the business in South Africa? Why can't I form it in the UK or in the USA, or make it global and have clients from all over the world? And that's what I did. And initially I was looking at the USA and wondering what state I was going to form my LLC in. And I chose California, one of the
Place,
highest tax
place
states.
to be.
Didn't
That's
know that at the
amazing.
time.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's amazing. First of all, that you like numbers. That's not my area at all. So I'm like fascinated that you like to do numbers. But it's interesting just, watching you in the time that I've known you over the past several years, that you really do have like an entrepreneurial spirit that kind of guides you, right? And even though we have setbacks sometimes, like you just described, and maybe take a detour or a step back, but then you kind of regroup, right? And and then continue on like stronger and brighter. And so it's an amazing journey to be able to watch you blossom and evolve. And so I guess at the end of the day, I don't know this area, but I'm just going to ask the question. So the bookkeeping is pretty much standard, is that correct? It doesn't really matter where your clients are or working, like the numbers are the numbers, right? I'm sure there's like tax stuff which is above my comprehension, but the numbers are the numbers, right?
Right. So the bookkeeping is pretty standard across, globally it's standard, but the difference is taxes, as you said, which I don't include in my services. So I have the bookkeeping services and I exclude taxes because it's so different from country to country, from state to state. And so it's best that I exclude it. I don't enjoy taxes anyway, so it makes sense to exclude something that I don't really enjoy and then choose to collaborate with the tax preparer and the CPA who, I mean, that's what they do. They, advise and file taxes. They chose that. They enjoy that. I chose bookkeeping. I enjoy that. So that's where the collaboration comes from, and it works well because, like, we fit well together.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I always enjoy, our time when we collaborate. And they always say, like, death and taxes, right, are two concepts that no one can escape, right? So obviously you just shared that, in your work you're preparing the numbers and then you outsource or find, a tax preparer based on the country of where your client's in. And myself being in death care, what I wanted to share with you today was, sometimes we come across situations or things that happen to us that we really are just not prepared for. And sometimes, we all have a story, right? We all have something that's our story, and we tell our story with conviction, right? And with authority, because this is our story. And this past couple of weeks, I had an interesting, I'm going to say, situation come upon me. So, as you know, I have one daughter, and my daughter's going to be 30 this year. And she just got engaged to Frankie several months ago. And, so wedding plans are in order and kind of, looking at different venues and different things and things of that nature. So, as I've shared, I believe, with you and probably on a former podcast, I had been married to her father, and we were married for a short time back in the 90s. And we had Shayna, and Shayna was 9 months old, and the actual marriage itself was just not working. So I ended up being a single mom raising my daughter, and her dad really had no, real interaction for whatever reason or situation. So we just kind of went about our own journey. And then, as she gets older, it's time to go to college, and, you're bringing your child to school, and it appears, just like we talk about appearances, right? I think it's like everyone seemed to have a partner in tow with 2.2 kids behind them, and everybody seems to be married and in a relationship. And that was my perception in touring these colleges. And I remember literally sitting at the fountain of Florida State University, which is this iconic fountain in Tallahassee, in front of the beautiful university. And as many water droplets were going up in the air as many tears were coming down my face. Okay. And I recall just feeling like I just wanted her father to connect with her, and her to have, like, not to be consistently reminded with new students that she's meeting and new peers, where's your father? Where's your father? Where, like, to be, have to, and you're supposed to be going off to college and having a positive experience. And that was like the question. So I remember, having a conversation with her father, and they did, have since rekindled their communication, and sometimes, we all come with, again, a story. And, if we live through the eyes of abandonment, or we live through the eyes of less than, or, being made to feel it, we kind of take all of our experiences and that becomes our story, right?
Right.
So this past couple of weeks, again, with the wedding plans kind of underway, I received a text from my ex-husband and asking if we could chat. And I said, yeah, of course. And I, they say don't assume, right? Don't assume, but I just assumed it was going to be something about the wedding or when they were planning it and things of that nature.
Mm.
So I was, finishing up work. I said, yeah, we can chat later on tonight. So we got on the phone, and he basically said to me, Shireen, he's like, Tanya, he's like, first of all, he goes, I don't know how to tell Shayna this. And he goes, but I don't know how to tell you this either. He says, I have a prognosis of bone cancer, and it's metastasized, and I have 6 to 12 months to live. And hearing that news, again, with my background as a funeral director and having been married to this man, having gone through the divorce, 29 years have passed, right?
Mm.
And I just sat there, and it's like sometimes situations make you pivot, right? They just, and, we don't walk the walk of another person. We don't know the reasons behind the choices that anyone makes.
Mm.
And sometimes we don't know the reason by the choices we make, right? I mean, we can even speculate on that. So
Mm.
it was just a really interesting conversation to have that, now we've been on the phone pretty much every night for the past couple weeks. And, just being supportive as far as like, what's it like to be faced with a diagnosis that that you're not going to be here in 12 months. And we did talk about miracles, right? That was my first question. It's like, do you believe in miracles? And, but, the reality and the facts and the science are there. So yes, there's always a miracle. But what I bring to the table this afternoon with you, Shireen, is our experiences sometimes make us pivot, right? Make us think differently. So now I could no longer have the story that, I was a single mom. Yes, I was a single mom, but the journey has evolved, right? The journey has changed. And sometimes we can sit with feet in the sand, and we're mad, or we're angry, or pissed off, or ticked off, or whatever vocabulary words we want to use.
Right.
But something shifts within us, right? Something shifts to, I don't know if the word is soften, or just see something from someone else's perspective.
Mm.
So what my ex-husband asked of us is if we could go up and spend the weekend, because there's things that he wanted to share, that he wants to before he passes, specifically to Shayna. And I really, again, who are we to judge, right? Who are we to judge? As we just, illustrated with the situation, with the tragedy, we sometimes have tragedies in our own lives, right? Mini tragedies, big tragedies, and the magnitude of what we do and how we process them, and what we can actually take home, like what's the message, right? So am asking you, have you expressed your pivot with your work, and have been in aviation, and now doing bookkeeping, virtual bookkeeping, as we like to say. What are maybe some situations that have, maybe redirected you, or anything that maybe experienced that you thought it was one way and then maybe softened up a little bit?
Hmm. That's a good question, Tanya. I mean, the very situation that I was in, you know, being in aviation, I didn't think I was going to do anything else other than aviate, other than being in a plane. But I mean, look, I have never actually had any of that, like those experiences, like what you're going through right now. But, you know, for me, I was very hard set on not thinking it was going to go any different. And so when the pandemic hit, it shifted everything inside of me, in the sense of tomorrow is not guaranteed. I have been chasing after money every single day, getting more hours in so that I can get more money because I need to open an RA, a retirement annuity, sort my life out, be able to retire at a certain age. I had everything that I needed to like get to and sort out to have a good life and to protect myself when I'm to retire. And then when this happened, what was the point? You know, it it made me sit back and go, wait, well, hold on. Maybe it wasn't supposed to be that way. Maybe this was meant to happen to take me out of that place and show me that that's not the be all and end all. You can be whatever you want and still live a life. You don't have to follow a strict um, matriculate, study, get a degree, go find a job, buy a house, buy a car, have a family, get married, grow old, die. I think
Yeah, exactly.
it changed all of that in me. And, you know, you can still have a good life, not knowing what tomorrow might bring, not knowing if you're going to have enough money to support yourself in retirement. What's going to happen is going to happen, and it's okay. Like, so I softened up on myself. I softened up
Hmm.
on being so hard on me and comparing myself to my sister and my brother because they're an engineer and a lawyer. So they had done all that, gone to school, finished school, got their degree, got their amazing jobs. My brother's married, child. So that was so much to reach for. And it's not wrong. I mean, that's what they chose and that's what they're doing, and that's okay. But I put so much pressure on myself to do that. I was like, oh, I've got to do that.
Exactly.
And I didn't do it exactly the way they did it. And shame on me for not doing it the way they did it. And I should have done it the way they did it. And I felt like the little bit of a black sheep in the family because, you know, wasted my parents' money, you know, kind of thing. I was hard on myself. And then
Hmm.
obviously this whole perspective of going, it's okay. It's okay. You don't have a degree. No, that's not the end of the world. Or, you know, you went straight out of school and went overseas and all paired and camp counseled and spent years doing that and then came back and went into aviation. You know, it it's your life.
Yeah.
Do with it what you will. And you're the only one that's going to begin it and end it. And so live it and know that you've lived it to the best of your ability, no matter what you do. You know, just do it and give it your all. Um, and so, and be
Yeah.
gentle. Be gentle on yourself. Stop being so hard on yourself.
And
That's not, you know, yeah.
exactly. And I think that's like the essence of what we all do, right? Across cultures, across ages, across, demographics is what is the norm, right? What is the norm? What is the expectation? So I have to ask you, so in the United States, they call it living the American dream. Is that the same phrase that you use in South Africa? You say, what do you say, living the South African, like, is there such a phrase that exists or no?
I think so.
No,
Yeah,
no, no.
honest. I
Okay,
don't think so.
that's funny. So we always talk about cold. Okay, so in the States, it's people want to live the American dream, right? So when you say, well, what defines the American dream? It's buying a home, getting a job,
Yeah.
saving for retirement, getting married, having the kids. It's like this cliche. And there's many people that I know that I grew up with that are in that quote unquote box or category, right? My box didn't turn out that way, right? It sounds like your box didn't turn out that way. And I think though, as we morph, there's probably more of us like there than I'm not doing like us versus them, but I think so many of us kind of feel less than as we go through these experiencing, not realizing that there's a lot of us out there like you and I, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that have faced adversity or challenges based on situations. Some things have affected many people all at one time. So,
Yeah.
for example, if it's a disaster, if it's a pandemic, right? Those things affect everyone. But then you have your mini tragedies within your own families, right?
Yeah.
Someone gets ill. My dad was diagnosed with dementia, passed last November. My ex-husband is terminal. So, I mean, things happen that evolve. So it's like, what is one to do as far as like, what is the response, right? And I always tell my daughter this. I said, you can ask 20 people, and people are only giving you their opinion based on their experience, their education, and their viewpoint. That may not be the right one for you, right? So it's just interesting to always, have the time to collaborate with you and be able to say that sometimes life makes us pivot, whether you want to or not, right? Or as you said, like, redirect you or say, you know what, this isn't what we're going to have you do right now. And sometimes those choices come to us by ourselves, right? By our own thoughts to say people want to, go, for example, become a Buddhist and go live, like, of course, more like a free type of life.
Right.
And people do that. But I think a lot of times we sit under our struggles and under our challenges and try to go to work and put on a happy face and everything is okay. Everything is okay. But where do you have the time to share what's really happening, right? Like to what's really going on. And if you think about it, like it's more than just showing up to a meeting or showing up to work or, doing the crossing the T's and dotting the I's and everything is okay. And you get a paycheck and everything is okay. But stuff sometimes is not okay, right? Not okay. And I like having the space, with you to be able to share, on our podcast and in our interactions to really maybe help people think about what is it that they're doing, right? What are our listeners doing? And how many people are sitting back, doing like Groundhog Day, the same thing every day, expecting a different result. And as your life literally passes you before your eyes, and one of the best assignments I think I give my students in mortuary school is they have to write their own obituary. And that assignment is very powerful because, whether or not it comes to fruition, but we can all look back and reflect on how do we want to be remembered, right? Is it because we worked 50, 60 hours? Is it because we never took a vacation? Is because we stayed in relationships that we shouldn't have? Is it because the retirement was so good we didn't leave our job when we should have, right? So sometimes we are tied, whether it's tangible or intangible, but we're tied to things that we think are good for us. So, as you said, securing a retirement. Some people it's securing a pension. Some
Yeah.
people it's, roof over their head. But when you kind of just let the universe guide you, right? And just kind of let it go and say, you know what, where am I supposed to be, right? What is, and some people, our viewers and listeners out there that are religious, can maybe take more of a religious perspective. And for those that are not, we'll use the word universal law. So I think it's interesting though to, have the space to share that what is glitters always is not gold, right? And it's very true about illusions versus fact versus fiction and how we show up in life,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. No, 100% agree with you. And that's the whole point of this podcast is that we can just share with one another, chats, just be open, free, and create a safe space to share these things with. I don't think there's a lot of people that want to share some of these things because I think it's taboo. I don't think it's normalized to chat so openly about these things. I mean, I get nervous still when I talk about it. I still get nervous because goodness knows, there's still a lot that not a lot of people know about me. And, I always get nervous when I share too much about something.
What's the fear? What's the fear behind it? Is it that when someone knows they're not going to like you anymore or they're going to look at you differently? What is the fear?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of being so vulnerable with someone that it makes me an easy target. That, and fearing of just pure judgment and ridicule. And, you know, funny because I wanted to share this, and it's probably one of the reasons why I struggled with a lot of, and the word comes, we've spoken about it, strife. But in my life growing up, I have been disappointed so many times in my life that I no longer wanted to trust anyone. And so I stopped trusting people and rather got the mentality of, I'll get you before you get me. And so I became very angry with everyone. I didn't trust anyone. I thought everyone was out to get me. And therefore, I didn't come across as someone that was very likable. And so that caused a lot of strife in my life. And now that I've worked through that, the remnants of what's left over is the rawness of being extremely judged for what for the raw experiences of what I went through. And if I voice it, the judgment that I'm going to get, the ridicule that I'm going to get, the me being a hard target now, everyone's going to come for me, kind of thing. So it's like, that's the remnants of it. But also it's the fear of just being vulnerable and speaking out on things that have happened and what I personally went through and my experiences with it. It doesn't mean the way I experience things and what I went through is the way everyone else goes through a similar situation. Everyone is different. And so there's the other thing of people are going to listen and go, oh, well, if I was in that situation, I would have done it differently, or I would have done it that way. And I think kind of takes away from your story, kind of thing, when people say that, like it diminishes what you've experienced and what you went through. And so I try and stay away from that and warn people to don't come into a situation thinking like that. Come into a situation to just listen and to hear the person, because you don't know what that took for them to speak up and speak out and talk about it,
Right. I heard this phrase one time and it was like, what other people think about you is none of your business. And it's very true. It's kind of
Yes.
like, I mean, we talk about everyone has an opinion, right? And somebody's opinion is, again, based on their background, experience, education, their upbringing. And people have the right to judge, right? But we sometimes fear the judgment, but it's almost like people are entitled to like us or not like us, or see whatever they want to see from their perspective, right? So, but I think though, having the first, it's courage, right, to come with your story, to be able to share it. But my personal experience, and I've hid behind many failed things, right? Like 2 failed marriages, a foreclosure. Like, yeah, I've hid behind it. And now that I pivoted, right? I pivoted and I'm able to speak about it, share about it. And I almost feel like people sometimes reach out to me after, whether it's in a classroom or in a marketing meeting or a department meeting, and say, wow, like, I didn't know that happened to you. And thank you for sharing. And so sometimes it makes us more real, right? It makes us more real because, sometimes people just see what they want to see and they judge, right?
Right.
And again, I think culturally, my upbringing, Italian, Irish, Catholic upbringing, it's like there's a lot of shame and guilt that's imposed. And I have a lot of Haitian students, and the Haitians say, Professor, you sound like the Haitians. So I think I'm being adopted as a Haitian because the culture is very similar when you have shame and guilt if you don't do what the right thing is culturally, right,
Yeah.
along the track. And
Right.
so I think, though, as we evolve, right, as humans, and for somebody to meet you, Shireen, I mean, you're eloquent, you're beautiful, and you share gracefully, and to hear when we really get into it, as far as what the fear is, it's still like the voices. It's the fear of judgment, right? Fear of what someone's going to think. But again, we have to remind ourselves that people can think what they want, right? I mean, not everybody is going to like us, and not everyone is going to come with our sentiments. But I think there's also people that really are lacking etiquette, and I'm just going to use that universally, right? Like, as once something has already happened, to say, oh, I would have done it this way. And it's almost like you have to come up with stock phrases. Thank you for your feedback, you know
Yeah.
thank you for your feedback, and that's it. And it's almost like whatever their opinion is, because you can't change it, right? We only can do now with what the information we have today.
Yeah.
And hindsight is 2020. That's like the old adage of a lifetime. It's like hindsight is 2020. If we can look back at every experience to say, how would we react? And a lot of times we are reacting with emotion, right? Not logic.
Yeah.
And that, brings up, as far as our conversation about strife, is, there's all these different personality tests out there, and there's all these different viewpoints, and there's extroverts and introverts, and how people show up, right, in their own environment. And I think sometimes that people are insensitive, right? People are insensitive, and especially coming off, for some people still think we're in, or whatever the viewpoint is regarding the pandemic.
Yeah.
It's like sometimes it becomes political, and people have had rifts with their own family members because someone's not seeing the way you see it.
Yeah.
So I think when we step back from that situation and say, you know what, everyone is entitled to have their opinion,
Oh,
whether we agree with it, whether we don't agree with it. But when we have emotion centered on it, of course we want people to agree. It makes it feel stronger, right? It makes it feel
right.
better. But
Yeah.
I think when you're faced with situations, whether it's strife at work, or in the home, or tragedies like we've talked about, or things that just make us pivot, right? Things that just make us, like, whether we want to or not, whether we're ready or not. And that can change our story, right?
Yeah.
That can change our story. And we maybe can come away thinking, wow, I never thought of things in this perspective before. So I'm in a new space, right? And I think we all say that we want that, but sometimes when it happens, we question it, right? We question to say, is this the right thing? Because it feels unusual.
Yeah.
And they always say, when you're trying to do a habit, I always heard it's like 3 weeks is the perfect time to say that you kind of have a new skill, or after 3 weeks. But even like getting up in the morning, it's like we all have our routines, right? And it's like if we change up that routine, it's like, try putting your opposite shoe on first. Try brushing your teeth with your opposite hand. It feels different, right? It feels different. So I think, with our time to collaborate on, strife and world topics and things that just make us pivot, I think it's from our experiences, right? And we own that. I mean, my experience is different from yours. And I think as long as we go through the world not saying that one situation is worse than or less than, because every situation is so personal, right? And I see that in death care firsthand. It's like, somebody may be grieving for a child that was born, or that was stillborn, and then you have other people that have relatives that are 100 years old shedding as many tears. So sometimes we cry for things that we've lost, and sometimes we cry for things that we've never had.
That's
And but at the end of the day, the emotions are the same. And I think that's where the heart of it is. The emotions cross country, cross gender, cross any, death comes to us all. Tragedies happen in our lives. Some small, some big, some affect a lot of people, some affect a little people. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. What matters is how we process it, right? How we internalize it.
right. Because I was going to say, I think, and a step further with that, one could even say it's also the way you deal with things. Some people can deal with tragedies immediately. You know, they'll be able to accept it, deal with it, and move on. Some people deal with tragedies months later, years later, and maybe well into their old age do they only deal with that tragedy that might have happened, you know, when they were young. We can't give a timeline on how to heal. Everyone heals and deals with things in a very different way and manner. And so we should respect that, and we should respect that person's time and healing. So if someone takes that amount of time and comes back to you in 20 or 30 years' time, and you were a part of that tragedy that happened to them, and they came back to you and said, I want to speak about what happened at this time of our lives. And you might have dealt with it long ago, but don't come to the table going, oh, get over it. I mean, it's such a long time. Why don't you just move on like the rest of us? That shouldn't be your attitude. You should come with a gentleness. You should come as a stepping stone to help that person, because that person dealt with it differently, healed with it at a different time to you. So when they come to you and present wanting to talk about it, listen to them. Let them talk about it. Talk with them about it. If it's what they need, then talk with them about it. Yeah, I think there's a lot of, if you don't do things the way I do it, then you're wrong. You know, then you are holding on to things, or you are in a bad place. In the meantime, we've just got to really be sensitive with each other in each other's roads and the road that they're walking. I mean, we've spoken about this so often before, but it is so true. People's lives, experiences, everyone deals with it differently. I am 38 this year. Am I? 39, 38? Oh, I don't know. Okay, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. That's not what matters.
I don't do math, remember, don't ask me.
Anyway, but this is just a quick example because we spoke in our previous podcast about domestic violence and about suicide. And I can always link that podcast above for the listeners. But so I don't want to go on that topic again, but for domestic abuse and sexual assault, I have only well into my adult life had to deal with accepting the fact that sexual assault happened to me at a young age. And that's only coming up in my adult life. And that's something I have had to deal with at at the age of, you know, at the time it was 36, and we've been working through it as we go on. But it's,
Yeah.
not everyone is going to deal with things the way you deal with things. You might deal with it earlier on. Someone else might do it later on. We need to respect each other's roads and healing pathways. And I'm going to stop babbling because I'm babbling.
Well, you know, it's interesting. I appreciate you sharing, you know, that piece of you sharing, because maybe we could actually collaborate for a future podcast. I too have had a situation come up, and it wasn't even in literally my radar until I graduated with my doctorate. And I had just suppressed it, suppressed it, suppressed it. And then I ended up having crisis flashbacks, which is a whole other, you know, conversation for another time. So I think as we morph and evolve into, like, you know, better humans and whole humans, and try to heal the wounds that, you know, have kind of come upon us, you know, and get our message out that, you know, what looks okay sometimes isn't okay, you know? And I think, you know, kindness goes a long way in the
Mm,
world because
sure.
people know what's the Milo and Anderson, they say like, you know, people will forget what you said and forget what you did, but they'll never forget how they made you feel. So
Correct.
when somebody takes the time to listen, right, and takes the time to really listen to your story. I mean, if you think about it, everyone can get, you know, glammed up or hyped up and go to dinner and have a great time or do something fun, but it's the raw moments that really build the friendships, right?
Mhm.
Those are like in the moments of need, who do you call, right? Who do you call? Who can you really pick up the phone at any hour to say, hey, I need to talk, right? And that's what you call a true friend. But sometimes I think social media plays a role, environment plays a role, and also the illusion of what life is supposed to be, right? That whole, like, you know, Disney princess, like what we're supposed to be. So I appreciate you sharing your story. I do have a question though, Shireen. You had mentioned, you know, when you had to pivot with your career, and things of that. And, you know, we mentioned, you know, strife having come up. What strategies do you find have worked for you, both on, let's say, personal and work for healing? What can you share with us that, you know, you said, because you almost like put yourself in a box, like you lived in a box, right? Like the
Right.
world was bad and Sharice is going to be. So what helped you come out of that box, or not even come out, just move through the box? What has helped you?
That's a good question. First of all, the pivot for the work probably was the pandemic. If it wasn't for the pandemic, I believe that I would still be in that toxic environment and I would still be on that same hamster wheel, just going, going, going. So I am thankful for the pandemic, for taking me out and then opening my eyes to be able to realize that there is another way, and opening my own business. And the fact that I can actually do that, because I would never have believed you if you had told me that little old me, would have started my own business. Would never have believed you. I would have said to you, April Fools, you're lying. That ain't going to happen. But in regards to healing, you can't force someone to heal. It has to happen when the person is ready. And so there are some things that have happened to me that my brain has literally suppressed. And I have literally spent years of my life saying, oh, that's normal. And then I must just move on and carry on. That it took me having to go through life, having to go through experiences, hearing other people's stories, hearing other people's similar stories, and going, oh, was that wrong? Oh, wow. Oh, I didn't realize that that was wrong and that should never have happened. I didn't realize. Like it's very hard to explain. It's very hard to explain. It's like memories then start forming more clearer. Like there's a lot of memories that the faces are still blurred. Like there's times where I struggle to remember the details still to this very, very day. But, you know, back to the point of healing, you can't force it. It has to be when it's time, when you're ready. And when it's time and when you need to, and it comes to the surface, don't push it away. Like embrace it. Like take the time to look after yourself and go get that help. And help could be anything. For me, I reached out to a therapist. You know, I started actually looking to start actually reaching out for medical help and to talk it through. And I began to talk it through with someone, and they helped me work through a lot of the stuff. And so being gentle on myself is, I think, a big part of healing, you know, allowing me to feel these emotions. saying to myself that my feelings are valid and the way I feel is okay, instead of always going, oh, that's wrong, I can't feel that way, oh, I shouldn't feel that way, oh my goodness, it's being gentle on yourself and being okay with
Mhm.
the different emotions that you go through, because you go through a whole load of different emotions, but you also go through a lot of, oh, that makes sense,
Right.
oh, right, that's why I do this, or I automatically, my personality and the way I just thought, this is just the way that I am, and it can't change. Um, when those things started coming up, I kind of went, okay, yeah, that makes sense why I do those things. Yeah, it
Right.
makes sense.
Right.
So it's just time. You need to be soft on yourself, gentle on yourself, get the help you need, and time. And know that
Yeah.
your feelings are valid. Yeah.
And I think you bring up a valid point in that, you know, the emotions and the thoughts and the memories sometimes don't come up, right? Sometimes they do stay suppressed. And I think our brain sometimes is almost protecting us from what we can actually like process, right? So everybody can have like a same experience, but they process it differently, right? Everyone can go through the pandemic and come out differently. Everyone can hear the same news, with the recent tragedy and come away differently because we are all different. But
Mm.
I think the more we can share and collaborate, the stronger a bond we realize that we have with people, so people don't feel so isolated because they feel less than, or, again, some cultures are, not meant to discuss these topics, right? So we stuff them. But I mean, having a therapist is as valid as having, a coach. Like everyone should have one, right? I mean, everyone should have somebody that's objective and independent. But sometimes we think of, oh, a personal trainer is good, but a therapist is bad, right? Or we can come from that background. So now it's like, I mean, my daughter's a therapist. Like I love therapy. Like
Mm.
I welcome it, but I'm
Yeah.
just saying some cultures, right, based on traditions and, the history of that specific culture may frown upon it. But I think now, as we've emerged from a pandemic, or again, if we're still in it, whatever people want to believe, that we really shouldn't have to wait for a pandemic, an actual pandemic, to happen. When little things come to ourselves that turn into big pandemics for us, right? We should be able to take all of our words today and say, you know what? We've been here before, right? We've had some challenges, and we can make it brighter and better for us. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how old somebody is, it doesn't matter what education background, it's people are people. And we're all learning. And sometimes, I call it like old souls versus young souls. And sometimes you can see it, just because a person might be up in age, they might be a younger soul. Like they're still like not really processing it. So I
Mm.
think at the end of the day, when, we always come to the end of our podcast to share a few thoughts, I really just hope that our listeners take away that, again, it's not all what appears to be,
Mm.
right? And everyone has a story, and not just your story, not just my story, but everyone out there has a story. And
Mm.
how many people maybe can walk away from our session saying, you know what, let me start telling my story. And it may not come out all at once, and it may wobble, right? It's like, we're not birthed and we start walking, right? We crawl and then you fall several times, or if not a lot of times. So I
Yeah.
think as we navigate life, people will realize that we're more alike than we are different.
Mm. Yeah. No, I
Yeah.
agree with you.
So I wanted to ask you, Shireen, so strategies in the workplace, anything you would recommend? So you recommended for personal therapist as help, being gentle. What would you recommend for work strife?
You know what? When it comes to work, you carry yourself in the same way as you do in your personal life. So, even with strife can very easily come into your business when it comes to your clients and customers that you deal with. And what I say to that is absolutely kill them with kindness. Yes, because you do not know their story. You don't know why they are the way they are, why they are responding to you so argumentative, why they come with such anger, such resentment, such whatever the negativity, whatever they bring in. There's a reason why they're doing it. Try your best not to take it personally. That I'm speaking to myself with, because I take my job very personally, and my clients are, I look after them like they're my own, because I deal with their finances. Finance is a very, very top, like, sensitive topic. And so I come from a place that I need to show them that they can completely trust their lives in my hands, and know that it's no different when it comes to their finances. And whether it be your client or the people that work with your client that you have to deal with, for me, it could be anything. It could be CPAs, it could be tax preparers, it could be banks, it could be payroll providers, it could be any person linked that I have to work with that's connected with my client, that might be the ones that bring in the strife. All I can say is that you don't know where they're coming from, you don't know their story. Kill them with kindness, be gentle with them, and if you need to finish the conversation off, put down the phone, finish the Zoom call, go away, scream in your pillow, do what you need to, pray, meditate. But no, it's not you. Don't take it personally. I think a lot of people want to take it out on you. But if you keep on reminding yourself and you keep your side clean, apologize for what you do wrong, and don't take personally somebody that wants to take their stuff out on you. Be kind. Always be kind. Always be kind. And if it's you, the one that's bringing the strife, well, then you do need to sit down and maybe look inside yourself and start really thinking, what is it that causes me to do this? What is the deeper root here? Because clearly you are acting out in a certain way because of defenses maybe that you have up around your life. And there's a reason why you have these defenses up. Something has happened. Whatever that something is, find out, work on it, and it's okay to reach out for help. Therapy works. They're there to help you work through these things and get to the root of why you do some of the things you do. And that's all I want to say that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I believe too that the word I want to use is triggers, right? People get triggered. So, and I think a lot of times with triggers, you get displaced anger. So I think we'll save that for our future podcast. But triggers and displaced anger might be a hot topic that our listeners would love to hear about. So before we close, Shireen, tell us some fun things that are fun and free to do in South Africa that maybe you want to share, and I'll share some things in Florida. So what are some things that you do for fun, just to relax and have maybe on the weekend? Or first of all, when is the weekend in South Africa? What day is considered the weekend? Is it Saturday, Sunday, or what is it?
Saturday, Sunday. Yeah, it's Saturday, Sunday. Same as you guys. I think we don't have that many things to do that are free here in South Africa. A lot of the times you either have two things that you do. You can either stay at home with your family and invite friends over and have what we call a braai, but you call a barbecue. Have a
How do you
braai.
right? B-R-A. How do you spell it?
B-R-A-A-I. B-R-A-A-I. Braai.
Okay. And that
And
means
we,
barbecue? That means
well,
barbecue?
yeah. You invite friends, family over
Mhm.
around the pool, have a few drinks, put some steak,
What do
some.
you gotta ask? What's barbecue for South Africa? What do you
Right.
make?
So normally, we've got sasaties, pork chops, lamb chops, boerewors.
What's the first one? Satsarti? What's that?
Sasaties. So it's the stick that has the pieces of meat on.
Like
So
a
it's
shish kebab?
yeah, kind of like a shish
Shish kebab.
kebab.
Okay.
This is a smaller
Okay. Okay.
version, yeah. And then boerewors.
What's
So
that one?
boerewors is sausage. It's beef sausage. Yeah, we normally have that with salad. We have that with cheesy potatoes, garlic bread, potbrood. It's just bread that's cooked over the fire in a pot. Different ways like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
And then if it's not inside the house, even that, Tanya, costs money. You got to pay for the food and the drinks. So that's not really for free, got to be honest. But outside the house, we've got the beach. Go to the beaches for free. Go swim in the sea, suntan. You know, even the shopping malls, that's not really for free, unless you're window shopping. Otherwise, it costs money. And as you know, I'm an outdoor person, and a lot of the stuff that I do is all inside protected conserved nature reserves, which you have to pay $30 at the gate before you go in. So it's not all for free. If you want to do something for free, it's not really for free because you got to pay for something. Even if you want to go and buy yourself an easel with some paint, that
You
costs
gotta,
you money. And then you go home and paint a picture.
do you mind recapping? Do you remember when I asked you and you said you were going hiking and I just imagined that you're in a rainforest and you're like, Tanya, there's a desert. I'm like, oh yeah. I'm like, remember that story where it's like so funny? Like I just can't envision like so right, that's where you go in a desert hiking. Is that correct?
Right. So just for perspective for the listeners, I was in the Kalahari at this time when Tanya was talking to me, and you can go and Google a little bit about what the Kalahari looks like, but it's mostly desert and bush. And so that's where the conversation was coming from Tanya's point of view. So I was just telling her that I'm actually in a desert and not a forest.
Geography and numbers, okay, not my thing, okay? Let's just put that on the table. So awesome. Well, I'll share real quick before we conclude today. So some things here in Florida. On the west coast of Florida, all the beaches are free
Mhm.
and you can, just hang out, relax, walk, meditate, swim. But on here on the East Coast in the Miami, it costs to go to the beach, right? So it's not completely free. However, we do have a lot of malls, outdoor shopping, nice fountains like for the kids to play in. There's some dog parks. There's some museums. There's, opportunities for people just to gather, just to walk, walk sections of town that maybe have a little bit more history. So I think, given whether we're in, the States or South Africa, I think if we really find people that we want to hang out with, anything can be fun to do, right? Whether
Absolutely.
it's a braai, if I'm pronouncing that correctly,
Yes.
just collaborating like you and I have,
Mhm.
today. It's great and it's free, right? We're sitting here and having a great conversation, and we hope the listeners enjoy our topic. And so
Yeah.
with that, Shireen, any adding parts of
No, but can I ask, are the museums free there?
well, different ones. There's different types of museums. So there's like art galleries. There's ones that are paid.
Oh,
If you have, for example, like an aspiring artist that may showcase their work, a lot of times we have what's called art shows, especially on the West Coast, where all the artists will show their work and there's streets lined up with all different booths. That's free. If you want
mm,
to purchase something, you pay, but you can go and observe and hang out. And yeah, so there are a lot of free things to do in addition to the parks, very popular,
Okay.
and like things that you would like in more in the nature arena.
Yes. Okay. No, that's cool. No, I just wanted to find out about the museums, but yes. So this podcast is a little bit different for the listeners. I hope you enjoyed it. Please let us know what you think. Leave a comment, subscribe on the YouTube channel. That's where you can find the video version. But you can also leave a comment on the podcast or the music streaming apps. You can find us there. But yeah, Tanya, where can they find you if they want to reach out and chat to you?
Of course. So I live on LinkedIn because I don't have a TV. So you
Mhm.
can find me under Tanya, which is Tanya, Scotisi. It's S as in Sam, Cot as in Tom, E Edward, C Charlie, E Edward. My students love calling me Dr. T. So if you do join me on LinkedIn, that's what you'll see as a headline. And I look forward to connecting and collaborating with some of the listeners that maybe, never had the inspiration to contact us, Shireen.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, guys. So find us on friendsfromwildplaces.buzzsprout.com. Let us know your thoughts. And thanks for listening, guys. And we'll see you next time. And remember, you got this. Stay wild. Bye, guys.
You've been listening to Friends from Wild Places with Shireen Bueta. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast from the links to catch every episode and unleash your passion.